It is 10:01. I'll go ahead and kick us off and start. As everyone still keeps coming in, I hope everybody has grabbed their tea, grabbed their water, their coffees, whatever that they need to settle in for this beautiful learning session that we have today. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Rajdeep Atwal. I go by she, her pronouns, and I am a senior program manager here at North Sound ACH. And today's learning session in the advocacy series, today's topic will be focusing through the Emerging Areas Cohort, sorry. We're going to be talking about emergency preparedness. So some general housekeeping. I know folks are already entering their information in the chat here, just so I can elevate this. Please use the chat box throughout the session. It'll be monitored by the ACH folks, and we'll be working to answer any questions that do pop up. If you're able to, please turn on your cameras. We'd love to see your faces, but if you cannot, we completely understand that as well. And today's meeting is going to be recorded, and today's recording will also be available on our resource library. And then as we're all settling in, I'd like to go ahead and read our land acknowledgement. All right. So we begin by acknowledging with humility that the land where we are today is the territory of the people of the Salish Sea. Their presence is imbued in the waterways, shorelines, valleys, and mountains of the traditional homelands of the Coast Salish people since time immemorial. And so with that, I'd like to just take just a second for all of us just to be able to take a deep breath in and just realize that we're in a moment of change right now. Seasons changing, the year is ending, there's a lot going on. And I know that as we're coming here today, I want to acknowledge and thank you all for your time in participating in today's learning session. So with that, I also would like to say there is a link. Oh, sorry. There's a link at the bottom of this screen for that land acknowledgement that I'd encourage everyone to go ahead and use. It does allow for folks to be able to see the tribal land that you are all on and traveling through, and it is updated frequently. So just something if you're curious. Alrighty, next slide, please. Okay, so for our time together, here's our little agenda. We're going to be talking about network learning approach. We're also going to be introducing the Emerging Areas Cohort. We're going to have a wonderful panel today. We're going to be talking about emergency preparedness throughout the panel. And then the hope is that we'll be able to go into small groups and reflect and connect with one another. And then we'll close and talk about next steps. Alrighty, I'd like to go ahead and talk a little bit about our network and what we're doing here today and why we're being called to be here today. The network that we're building is a learning and advocacy network with folks that are in communities that we serve. The network is open to all community members and organizations to participate in. Within the network, there are cohorts, which is a strategy of the network. And the cohorts have been working together for the last 11 months to develop project ideas that we can further the goals of the communities that we serve. The cohorts also work to continue expanding on learnings from the network series and advance in their understanding of equity. The monthly learning sessions are open to all network members to join in and participate in this learning journey with us. Each learning series builds off of the month prior. The previous month, if you were able to participate, we learned through the equity cohort about reimagining data, and that series helped us learn about data equity and how data should be collected in a way that feels good to the population that it's being collected from. We invite everyone to join in and engage while we learn here together today. Every learning series builds on shared teachings and beliefs. And so today's learning series like I said, is going to be focused from the Emerging Focus Area, which is led by Rocio. There are 3 work groups within this cohort, and I'll go ahead and share those as well. The first one is Community Perspective Emergency Response, which is led by Vanessa and Nicole. We have another one, Youth and Emerging Leadership Engagement, which is led by Marco, Michaela, and Beth Ruth. Then we also have Rural Access to Care. That is led by Lindsay and Amanda Sloan. And so I invite you all to join us today with open hearts and open minds while we join in on this learning journey together. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and pass this over to Liz Baxter, our CEO here at North Sound ECH.
Great. Thanks so much, Rajdeep. And I actually asked to just carve out a couple of minutes here, mostly because this monthly learning series, which for folks who are new to the work of the ACH, we actually are just finishing our 4th year of doing a monthly series really focused around equity and tribal learning. And this year we launched the Collaborative Action Network, and we've really been kind of doing a bit of a deeper focus in on some specific topics that were raised by partners over the last few years. So this is the last one, and I just couldn't have today occur without thanking all of you for jumping onto these calls each month. We are not going to do one in December. And in January, you're all going to be invited to an in-person 2-day partner convening so that we can actually be in space together. We intentionally wanted to leave this couple of months for folks who are working on project ideas or different initiatives to just have some time to be meeting with each other, reaching out to our team if you need some help with data or writing or connecting with other, organizations. But just so you know that intentionally we kind of left this end of the year some space both for partners and for our team. But we would not be here if not for all of you kind of stepping into this space of learning, being exposed to new ideas. And I think for today's topic, just somehow, being able to digest and problem solve where we are just really lacking in our approaches to actually reaching all communities with the strategies that come up. And certainly from a year ago to now, we have learned a lot about the communities that are left out in emergency response, but that happens in a lot of different areas. So just before handing this to Rocio, just really wanted to take the time to express gratitude to you all. Not everyone on this call is a part of a cohort or a work group, so there's a lot of intermixing. So, folks have just spent amazing amounts of time and energy in trying to help the North Sound region expand from where it has been to where we could be. And just on behalf of our team, we just have an immense amount of gratitude. And thank you all so much. Rocio, I'm going to turn it to you to get us started.
Thank you so much, Liz, for the space. Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. My name is Rocio Castillo Fall. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Director of Community Engagement and Health Promotion. And I am the colleague of the Emerging Focus Areas Cohort. And through this cohort, our goal has been to collectively learn how to structural racism, discrimination, and inequity perpetuate economic, political, and social gaps in minority groups and historically marginalized communities, which is even more emphasized in times of crisis, such as an emergency or natural disaster. As such, members of this cohort, we have been working hard to co-design better and more inclusive programs, policies, and systems that consider and elevate the voices of diverse communities within the North Zone region. As Rajdeep mentioned, 3 areas were identified by community partners who have been working together to be better prepared for crises and disasters when this happen. We want to develop a community perspective in emergency response. We want to create leadership engagement opportunities for youth and increase rural access to care. In the past month, I have had a wonderful opportunity to collaborate with partners such as Amanda Sloan from Skagit Preschool and Resource Center, Beth Ruth and Jill Sprouse from the United General District 304, and recently with Mateo Hernandez and Jackie Julian from Communities of Color Coalition as co-leads in this cohort. My Northern ACH team, which I'm very proud to present, they're Marco Morales, Michaela Bendiola, Lindsay Canos, Nicole Willis, and Vanessa Diaz. Okay, well, thank you for giving me the space to talk to you about the Emerging Focus Area. So now it's time to move on to our conversation with our panelists about their experiences supporting the community in the 100-year flood back in November of 2021. We hope that this conversation will help us to be better prepared to respond to emergencies and natural disasters, taking into consideration the several lessons that we acquired during and after the floods that affected Whatcom and Skagit counties, and hear more about the interconnectedness between emergency preparedness, response, and the vital conditions that we all need to thrive, from housing, healthcare, food, and beyond. With that being said, I'm going to invite our very special guest speakers to introduce themselves and the organizations that they represent. So I have my three speakers, and now I'm not able to see them on the screen, but I'm gonna open the space for them to introduce themselves. Otherwise, I'm happy to do that.
Jose Ortiz. I'm with Catholic Community Services. I've been with Catholic Community Services for about 3 years, but I've worked with Catholic Church in directing migrant ministry and the Tri-Parish Food Bank, and I've done a lot of work with the youth. I directed youth programs for the Archdiocese and Hispanic ministry.
Thank you, Jose. Shall we pass it to Sylvia?
Yes, my name is Sylvia Mendoza, and I work for the Nooksack School District, Everson Sumas area, and I am the Family Engagement and Resource Coordinator. I'm also, I wear different hats, and so I'm also connected to our migrant population. So I am a family advocate for migrant families as well.
Thank you, Sylvia. Cristina.
Hi, I'm Cristina Facundo. I am part of the Northwest Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and I have worked in several groups kind of in the community throughout the years just to help the Hispanic community. I also, between Elizabeth Vicente and I, we started a group during the time of the flood for Unidos por una Causa to help our community.
Thank you very much for your time, for your willingness to come together to talk about how you help the community during the floods. So we have an initial question. So what did families or communities you served during and after the flood last year experience? And how are the services designed to meet the needs of these families? Let's start with the first question. Anyone will be able to provide some information?
So I guess I'll go first. So if you lived here long enough in the Skagit and Whatcom, you know what it's like. I've been here for over 40 years. My family's been here 5 generations. So, you know, this is nothing new. You know, the flood that we had last year, and who knows how it'll be this year. But I think for us, you know, the last 40 years, we haven't been really prepared. Our community, especially to provide services for our communities that don't speak the languages or don't know how to navigate the system. You know, if we don't go to them, you know, it's going to be really hard for them to go out and ask for help. One is that, you know, it's really hard for our communities to ask for help, but yet, but it's harder to navigate and to know the system. So that's what I saw when the flood happens. You know, there were some folks that were trying to come together to see how we could better serve our communities. We knew it was a disaster, and some of us learned it from the news, not from seeing it, you know, firsthand. So the first thing that happened, I started getting calls from different folks, different leaders, community members is who I got the calls from. I got calls from the churches. You know, can we, you know, this family needs blankets, this family needs this and that, they need food. Can Catholic Community Services or can the food bank provide any food or services? And so you know, it was really, really awful. And it took a lot of time for us just to come up with simple answers, you know, who's going to do what. I think the resources were there. You know, I started getting calls from different organizations, churches that want to donate, but we didn't really have like a key player that would be able to put all the services together and to do the outreach. You know, we done our best through Catholic Community Service, and we started partnering with ACH and you know, St. Joseph's Church and folks that just wanted to take the lead and started helping people.
Thank you, Jose. Ooh, lack of coordinations of services, huh? That's a tough one.
I can go next. I think
Thank you,
just
Sylvia.
to add on to Jose, you know, a lot of similarities, I think from the school perspective, because I'm a very trusted messenger in relationship with our school families, they were reaching out to me. And, you know, just again, it was very unexpected. And so these families were caught by surprise. And so they were, you know, calling, wondering where to go, where can they seek shelter? You know, they're needing to get away from their apartment because it's flooding. I had a family, just a story that was sort of stuck between, went around towards Deming, and then were sort of stuck between Deming and Highway 9, which they couldn't get into even you know, Mount Vernon or Skagit area because everything was so blocked. And, you know, it's just like they're not, they had children in their car. We couldn't get out of my house either because we were sort of, we had barriers of water going through some of the streets. And so it was just, everything was on, I was on the phone the whole time, connecting to school, connecting families to go to school for shelter, connecting families to go elsewhere, wherever they could go. So again, anyway, this one particular family, we ended up, I ended up calling the police department so they could host them at a church in Deming so that they could stay there for a couple of nights and give them shelter because they were stuck at a gas station. And so, you know, that's one of many stories. But again, it was just like I was also sort of, I felt sort of helpless in a sense because not being able to move or not being able to take them where they needed to go was a hard thing for us. But again, it was those barriers of language, connection, how to have access, where to send them next. You know, things were available after a week, but it was in the moment. Like, what do you do in the moment? And I think those were the surprising factors of what do we do when, you know, like we didn't have a plan. And so how do we create a plan for these families not to have to go through these situations, you know, in the spur of the moment, and also the lack of just those barriers, the language, the access, the know-how to, like knowing where to go. There was no protocol, there was no flow chart, like this is what you should do. There was no warning prior to that, right? And so in our little district of Nooksack, we lost a parent. And so just those kinds of things were very, very impacting. They still are impacting to our community. And I feel like some of these families are still, you know, struggling to move. And so, and we can talk more about that, but those are just different things that are still surfacing and are still present.
Thank you, Sylvia. Absolutely, the importance of educating our community, you know, in a cultural and linguistically appropriate way to serve them and empower them. Thank you, Sylvia. Christina.
Yeah, again, you know, I'll probably repeat the same things that Sylvia and Jose had said. Number one is the big thing is the language. You know, a lot of our community, you know, we don't speak the language. A lot of us are not they're not documented is the other thing legally. And that's the big one. That's the big one that stepped up with me and Elizabeth, was that the fact people were afraid to ask for help because of documentation. They're always asking them, okay, and that's a fear, and that's a big fear. I know from helping other families in the area, they're afraid to reach out. And so they go, where can we go for somebody who's not going to ask us for our information, who's not going to report us for immigration? And I think in this case, we don't even realize what fear these people are having, to live day by day with who can they go ask for help with, and then being denied that help, and they've been denied that help previously because of that. And then that's one of the things that we kind of saw between Elizabeth and I. And then the other thing is knowing, how to navigate. We can talk on the phone, but when someone is saying, okay, log into certain places so that you can see who's going to help you, and they don't have a computer, their kids don't want to help. Some of them might be too young. The kids are older, we don't have somewhere that we can have and this is something that I was going to bring up, like a community liaison, that can say, all right, these are the community liaisons. If you need help, go to them. They can help you contact them. So at the same time, that came up to me. I went to Whatcom Strong, and after the fact that, weeks later, Whatcom Strong came along. But like Sylvia said, at the moment, you didn't know where to go, you didn't know what to do. So then, us as church members, both Elizabeth and I think Jose, that's where I met you, right? You did come and talk to us, and we had already set up, because it was our own church members that needed something right away. We need food, we need diapers, we need this. So between Elizabeth and I, she out of the goodness of her heart stepped up to Father and just asked him, can we use the building? He said yes, and then later we get kicked out. But it was at that spur of the moment. They needed diapers for their kids. Their clothes was damaged, because of the flood. If you think about it, anything that was 4 feet and above was gone. Their shoes, their clothing, whatever. And really, they didn't know where to go. So thankful to a lot of people, they were able to jump on right away. One person in particular, she just went out and bought hundreds of dollars of diapers and formulas and stuff like that, until we can try to say, okay, there's other places you can go. But at that spur of the moment, this person stepped up to help, and that was great. So again, we are going, like, at that moment, there isn't an algorithm to follow in case there's a disaster. Who do you reach out to? What community members? What community liaisons to go to? So those are problems that we experienced.
Thank you, Christina. I have another question actually, I have several questions for you all, but I'm gonna pause myself for a second, and I'm gonna invite the group of people that are listening to this conversation. If you have any questions or any comment that you want to share with the panelists, please feel free to use the chat. We have plenty of time, and we want to make sure that this space feels safe, comfortable for you to ask those questions that maybe in the past you didn't have opportunity to do so. So again, a big invitation to you all to put your questions or comments in the chat. Okay, so great, thank you. One more question. So how can we improve the services? What do we need to do to be better prepared for the future? Because due to the location where we are, any natural disaster could happen at any given moment. So how can we be ready? How can we encourage our communities to learn more about emergency preparedness?
So for us, the flood is one thing, but our community suffers from different emergency situations. And we could go on and on, but for us, it could be housing at the beginning of the season for farm workers, or at the end of the season. So housing situations are always a huge challenge for us. But I think we're doing the right thing by bringing leaders together. I think one of the things that that I noticed and that we were even having a hard time is finding out who was doing what. So even between us as leaders, we're struggling to find out where can they go, where can we send them, who could go to see, to go visit them, and who's those trusted messengers. You know, that's one of the things that I kept working and I guess challenging the state and the local health departments is who are your trusted messengers, because not anybody, especially our community, when we send officials to their homes, you know, they're not going to open the doors because of different fears that they might have. So that's some of the challenges that we have in front of us, is how do we change our, you know, or support with trusted messengers within our staff that people recognize. And so that's one of the challenges that I see is, you know, first of all, you know, I think it's really good to continue these conversations and then learn from our communities, learn from, you know, I guess with age comes experience, and we've been around the block for a few years now, and we could help support some equity ideas to bring forth ideas of finding people that are trusted in the community that could be those leaders in our communities, that, you know, listening to their voice, having listening sessions in our communities from the community members themselves.
I love that suggestion / recommendation, Jose, on how we need to involve our community, right? They are the ones that can give us the answers and the direction to help them and serve them better. Christina.
Yes, I liked, you know, like Sylvia said, we need to know the algorithm ourselves. First, you know, as community leaders, we need to have an algorithm put out in case there is any kind of disaster, you know, any kind of disaster. It could be a freeze, it could be a flood, it could be an earthquake, it could be, you know, the mountain erupting or moving someone out of the area, or because we don't know where this algorithm is going to start, you know, who's going to start, who are the community leaders, who are the persons we're going to go to, and then have a plan from there. And like Jose said, we need to have, and I use the word again, community liaisons, you know, who are going to be those chosen community liaisons, people that know who they are, people, certain groups that can be the community liaisons, and people that are going to be trusted. You know, sometimes you can't send someone from an office because they're not going to open up to them, you know, and then make sure you speak their language. You know, we have a lot of languages in our community. We have Mixteco, we have, you know, Hispanics, we have Russian, we have everybody, Indian, and we need to be able to provide those for everybody. I know we even had people who came to the church who spoke Mixteco, and they had to bring a family member to translate for us, you know, because they're not even speaking Spanish. And that same thing happens in Skagit County. I know that because I used to work at Seymour, and we used to have three different dialects, and you have to have someone who could be able to communicate with these people. Not only is it the English, but it's also their native language that needs to be spoken. And when you send someone out into the community to talk to them what their needs are, you know, and if you can't communicate with them, then how are you going to be able to get their trust, you know?
I agree. Absolutely. Sylvia, please.
Thank you. I agree with Jose, with Christina. I feel like our families need, in order to help and know what next steps we're going to take in breaking down those barriers, we need to empower ourselves and educate ourselves before we can educate our families. If we don't have a plan, they don't have a plan. And so for us, how do we understand what the plan might be so that we can then help our families understand what that plan is and educate them, and knowing them, leading them to where there would be access. Navigating those barriers with families, breaking down those barriers is going to, what does it look like? Is it creating flyers? Is it doing step-by-step? Here's where you could go. Is it creating videos? Because like Christina was saying, some families can't read. We have a lot of families in our area who are, literacy is not their strength, not because they don't want to, but just because they've had their own traumas and barriers in their rising, right? And so thinking like, do we record videos explaining information? Do we do voice recording for some families? There's many ways that we can reach out to our families, and not thinking that one way is the only way, right? And so we have to differentiate that. We have to vary that to be able to reach them. And also having those relationships is going to matter. Our families are not going to just open up to anyone, and understanding what do we want from them and how do we want to support them. So in educating ourselves, we're educating them. And I think education is the key, and the different variety of forms of education is going to help sort of break down those barriers. Just in our district, we have, we have Mixteco, we have Triqui, we have Mam, we have Acahuacateco. And so we have so many different other dialects that we have to work with our families. And I shared a story the other day about I was bringing this child to school, and this mom handed me over this child to bring to school, and I hadn't even met her. And so somehow the parent got a hold of me, wanted me to register the children, and I brought them to school. That is called trusting, right? They're trusting me to bring this child to school. They're thinking, I had not met him before, and this mom didn't speak Spanish. She gave me a nod, she gave me a smile, and I told her, your child will be back on the bus. And so again, it's how do you get those people to trust you, so that they're able to, so you're able to see, they see you as a trusted messenger, as a trusted person, and you're building that relationship with them.
Thank you, Sylvia. So I'm hearing we need to really invest ourselves in a community to develop that trust, to develop those relationships, to empower members from those communities to be in positions where they can help their communities as well. Like if we, because when we work with the Latinx community, it's so important that you go and let's say to a specific organization where you want to receive help, and you recognize yourself in the person in front of you. Right, so that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing right now. So since the floods and all these stuff situations that have happened in the last year, have you seen any changes in the system, some favorable changes that can help us to serve the community better? Or perhaps what are the changes that we need to implement?
Well, we're very close to maybe being flooded. I hope not, but it could happen. And I really, at least for myself, I really haven't noticed any changes. So I believe that if we have a flood again, we're going to be back in the same situation or worse. As far as resources, I think, we have some wonderful representation of different organizations here. It's like a lot of times when I meet with groups, I want to ask and I want to learn what their talents are. And I think we were, in this meeting, we have, like I say, a lot of wonderful organizations that do wonderful work, but a lot of times we don't know one from each other, or we don't know what the other one does. So I was just thinking, I know there's like the 211 booklet that goes around. I just thinking maybe it's time to build or put together a new booklet with information, and then in the different languages that we're able to write, have numbers, have maybe pictures that our community will understand. I'm just really afraid that if a flood happens again, or we have a disaster in our hand, a month from now or a few months from now, we're going to be back in the same situation where Christina will start calling different organizations, and Sylvia and myself, trying to find resources for our community. And it's gonna take a lot of time before we could organize it and help our communities. I think the housing is the biggest issue. Where can we, which churches, which schools, who has a warehouse where we could house people. That's going to be some of the biggest things. I think the food and other things will be out there for us, but how do we get the food there? Who will, who's going to take that role? All the different things that we might be able to come up with is who's going to be the main person that we could, that's trusted in our communities, and that it's trusted by other organizations.
Thank you.
Silvia, can you let me jump in here?
Absolutely, go for
my
it.
light bulb turned on. I said, when Jose said that, my light bulb turned on right there. I don't know, being in the healthcare, in the past, I know both Whatcom County and Skagit County have those little books for seniors that open up, and they say a list of nursing homes, a list of food banks, a list of lawyers, a list of esto y esto. And that book was my lifeline when I went out being a nurse. Okay, I would, if someone needed a name for the food bank, wherever your area is, you open up to it, there was a food bank. If you needed someone, a doctor or clinic, there was a food bank, there was a phone number in the message. I think maybe as a community member, we need to have those resources in that little flyer, just like you guys have seen it. And you guys all know what I'm talking about, right? I hope. Have you guys seen that little book?
Long
Okay.
time ago, but yes.
A long time ago. Okay, well, I used to use that book and I used to give it to my patients. Okay, and it helped them a lot. And maybe this is something we can do, like I said, my light bulb just turned on, that we can put those resources in that kind of a little book and have those available for people, in clinics, at Catholic Community Services, at schools, at ACH, or anywhere else, at the food banks, and then that way we compare people, we're educating them. This is the people you can reach out to in case of this. And this is, if you need food, if you need shelter, if you need advice, or you need someone to, communicate for you or be a communicator for you, we can have that all in that kind of a little bit of a book.
That's a
And-
great suggestion, Christina. Thank you so much. I invited everyone to start putting their comments and questions, and I'm so glad that everyone paid attention to me, because they did ended up putting some stuff here that I want to read. I have some questions for you. I know that we need to carve out some time to go into the breakout rooms, but this conversation is so wonderful, so I'm just going to spend an extra 5 minutes on this, if you don't mind. So if you could imagine one specific aspect, resources, process, or role that will most alleviate the most impactful pain points when responding to a disaster in the county communities, what would it be? Will be the flow chart that Sylvia you mentioned, or it will be working with community liaisons? You could answer that question, one specific aspect that could help to alleviate those most impactful pain points.
I would say have an algorithm, the algorithm to have us prepared to be able to help somebody else.
Okay, Christina, thank you.
I would say, yes, some sort of a I like the idea of a flood response, book of services and places that families can look for. I don't know. Let me think about it a little more. Because yeah.
What about you, Jose?
I think for me would be really good to have I didn't want to use the pyramid, but I guess that's a model that we could use. One person gets a call, or one organization gets the call, and then it's a ripple effect. So maybe more of a circle. You call the person in the middle, and then we have the connections to all the different organizations, and so it'll have a ripple effect. You call somebody, and then somebody will send them to another organization where they could have the resources, and pretty soon the information will get out to the community, and then the community will share that information with others, and it'll come back. So it's a ripple effect that we're creating, just like when you throw a rock in the water. And that's a system that I would like to see, where we're all working together, but recognizing the work that we're going to be doing. And then as far as the pamphlet, I don't, one of the things that I used when I was handing out information about knowing your rights or who to call in an emergency situation, it is just a little tiny pamphlet that they put in their wallet. A lot of our community members don't even have an ID. So they would write their name, and then in case of an emergency, we could call somebody. I started handing them out because we found a lot of people that didn't have any relatives. If they had an accident or if they passed away, we didn't have any way of informing their family members. So something simple where they could put their name and then just where they could reach out for help.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's a wonderful suggestion. I can see here that people are talking about how can we diversify the people that we hire in the organizations that potentially going to serve our communities. So that's like a question / suggestions. Also, like the school districts, they're really, really well connected with the community. So this person is wondering about partnering or connecting to the school district counselors, specifically to support the migrant communities, to share emergency resources and continue developing relationships. What else? Maybe we need a design clinic to move promising ideas forward. Absolutely. Can we talk more about the role that the government plays in the response to disasters and the deficit, the lack of resources, the gaps that exist for providing equitable services, and how can we improve that? I cannot summarize the message here. So, but yeah, let's spend, if it's okay with you, 3 minutes to talk about the gaps.
Well, I have a couple of suggestions. One is if we want to include our community, especially the young people, I think there's many ways to include them. And I think we're missing out on supporting them through school or through internships. One of the things that's working here in Skagit, it's Maestros para el Pueblo. And, my kids have been through that program. So I'd say the same thing about any organization, any program that we're running is how do we support our youth through education, but have internship programs where they could fall in love with the work that we do. I'm just kind of seeing the writing on the wall that I have a few years to go, and I would like to find a few people to take my place. So I hope that I could encourage and teach others, what I've done and how I love my work. So, if we could do the same thing with other and other organizations could do the same, I would love to see that happen.
Yes, building capacity, training our youth, encourage them to be aware about what's going on, be ready and prepared for emergencies. Absolutely. Any other comment about this, Sylvia, Christina?
Just thinking, I agree with Jose about building leaders in our community. We have a small thing that we do at our school. It's called Club de Lectura. And so we bring tutors from the high school to teach because we don't have a dual language program and we don't have a lot of bilingual teachers in our school. And so this is one way that we can reach out to our students and reach out about like preserving our language and preserving our culture, is we have these students from the high school come and teach literacy skills in Spanish to our little elementary students in 1st grade, 2nd grade, and 3rd grade. And so something like that we're building these capacities. We're trying to teach leadership with these students. And let me tell you that it has worked. And we've seen we've taught it for 12 years. We stopped after COVID and we're now starting it back again. And we have, 32 tutors that are coming to the different schools, the different buildings, and they in turn are getting leadership skills so that they can see what they're capable of. They can use those skills. They can see that they can become teachers. They can become nurses. They can become, anything they want, and they can definitely give back to the community. And that's the purpose of our program. It's a language heritage program, and just to preserve our language, preserve our heritage, and be proud of who they are. And I think it is working. And so we're really proud of that. And so something that just brought to mind what Jose was saying. How do we continue to build our Latinos community into specific agencies or specific roles and careers that they can take?
Thank you. You know what? I'm gonna use my privilege as a facilitator and I'm going to make a little adjustment in the agenda. I love that people are engaged. They're having a lot of comments. There are a lot of questions are coming through. So I am going to probably skip the breakout rooms if that's okay with everyone. If not, my apologies. But I really want to continue this conversation. It seems like people are talking about like, yeah, the flyer, the booklet, that could be great because, you open it up, you have resources and things like that. But what happens when your client calls and it keeps calling and no one is answering? And if they answer, the navigation to get to that specific resource is exhausting. And especially in a crisis when you don't have the mindset. How can we be more compassionate? How can we also take care of ourselves to do a better job during a crisis response? Any thoughts on that?
I think it goes back to who you have at the end of the phone, and it's who we have in our organizations. If the persons that we have in those organizations who are answering the phone, or at the parish level, the secretary, if they don't know our community and if they don't have the heart to meet people where they're at and with their emergencies and when their situations, we're gonna fail. And I think we've done that for many, many years where, a lot of times we don't, well, I'm going to say it, we don't have the heart or we forget why we're in the position that we're at. And, so I think in order to change the system a little bit is we got to find people within those communities that have lived that experience. If you haven't lived that experience, there's that saying of, if walk a mile in my shoes and you know what it's like. I don't really believe that. It's you gotta live it in order to understand it. And I think until we start hiring people from those communities or getting them involved or giving them an opportunity, it's when we're going to see changes, and that's where our community is going to feel more comfortable. I came from a place where I was given an opportunity, and I have never forgotten that opportunity. And that opportunity opened doors for me. And when Christina mentioned NRO, that's where I came from. Maybe a 17-year-old, that NRO opened the doors for me to further my education, because I didn't graduate from high school, but they would help me with my GED. It's something that I will never forget. And that's inspired me coming out from working in the farms, and it supported me with my education, and it's something that I'll never forget. And I think that's where a lot of the kids are looking for, an opportunity, and a lot of members of our community are looking for that. And we're in those roles to provide those opportunities for our community.
And how can we support the people? Let's say that, we are hiring some youth from the Mixteco community, and they probably don't know how to navigate, right, the organizations. How can we make sure that we're also going to support the people that we're hiring in order for them to continue lifting their own communities?
Well, I think it's the other way around. I think they could teach us. I think a lot of times we're trying. We think we have all the answers. I could speak now. I'm not shy about speaking anymore from my experience. So I think we have to listen, and we got to understand, their lifestyle might be completely than ours. If we walked around, if we talked or asked our participants, their life experience, everybody's going to have a different life experience. And education only goes so far, but a live experience goes further. And I think we got to change the way we hire people, and bringing in people with a lived experience also.
Thank you, Jose. Silvia, Cristina.
Sorry, I was just going to say that I agree with Jose. I think we can reach them in many different ways. Our families, we have a lot of Mixteco families, a lot of families from Guatemala, and so if from the school perspective, I just send them a flyer to invite them to a meeting, they probably won't show up. But if I give them a personal call, or if I send them a text, or if I even remind them the day of, they're going to show up. And so I'm finding different ways of how to reach the families, and these families will respond. I think it's thinking of them It's thinking of what their needs are. It's helping them go through the process. Some families will say, well, and I see that there's a meeting today. Is it important? Sometimes they'll ask that question. Is it important? And I'll say, meetings are always important. We're always wanting to welcome you. We're always wanting to give you information about what's going on in the school and how it affects your children. And so just being encouraging that way, I think we can reach out to many families. And I think, like Jose was saying, I think it's what can they offer to us? What are families offering? What can we learn from them? And what are those barriers that they're facing? So that we can try to help them navigate those barriers.
Thank you, Sylvia. Cristina.
Like we said, education, for preparedness and stuff, and getting our young people involved, because like Jose and I and Sylvia have been here forever, but someone has to take our place. And like Jose says, unless I can see them three, and I already know, we all worked in the fields. We all knew what the hardships were. We all didn't speak the language correctly when we came to this country. And now we're part of community, community members, community helpers, and like Jose says, we live that because we all experienced that. Every single one of us that is here on this panel right now. And we know that those needs were real at that time, and they're still real now, but it just took us years to learn the language, to learn how to navigate, how to educate ourselves. And we're not going to be doing this from one day to the next, but if we can make little steps, to educate everybody, to be able to empower them. Like we said, we need to empower each and every one of them in our community. And a lot of it, I think if we can start with our young people and get them more involved, that would be very helpful. That would be very helpful as well.
Thank you so much. I'm taking notes. I'm so happy that this meeting's been recorded, because for sure I'm gonna go back and just put it again and listen, take more notes, and just hopefully we can create a better process and reduce some of the gaps when we are responding to emergencies, and even before, like really focusing on emergency preparedness for marginalized communities and help us to be better as humanity. So we're going to go through breakout rooms. It's going to be just for a couple, for 5 minutes, just a couple of people in each breakout room, because we really want you to not just, we've been listening to the conversation, we've been absorbing this beautiful knowledge, but now we want you to start thinking, like, how could your organization support emergency preparedness? And any additional questions that you want to elevate to Jose, Sylvia, Cristina, because if we don't have time today, well, we can continue these conversations. I promise you, I'll take it on my own that we can continue this conversation to be better prepared, because at the end of the day, this is our community, and we have to get better. So without being said, we're gonna go into the breakout rooms for 5 minutes. I'm gonna ask my team if we're ready for that. Sure. And we'll come back and we're gonna chat for a few more minutes, and we'll see how that goes. All right, welcome back, everyone. Whew. Anyone would like to share about the conversation that you had? I know that probably gave you only 5 minutes, but anything that you could offer to the group. Mike.
Yeah, hi, thanks. It was short, but it was really good. First, we're loving the panel. Second, we're aware that there are emergency manager positions, both in like our county governments and in our city governments. And we thought this conversation was so great today. We would love to see that conversation with those folks in the room, to see kind of what have their challenges been. I would love to hear from the panel too, as a question to the panel, how has it been working with those folks and how could we make it better? Because I'm assuming things weren't great, because I think we all see a lot of room for improvement. But that was just one of the questions that we had with, like, this is such a good conversation. We should be having it with those that our government is entrusting and putting in charge of that, and then figuring out what do we need to do to support that, or what do we need to do that they will never do, that we need to do as community members, that we need to do for our neighbors, but to have a really good lay of the land. That was our group's kind of inspiration, if you will.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah.
Can we answer?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Well, looking not just at Skagit and Whatcom or Washington, but if you see around the country, when they start interviewing people in the ground, and it's just your, our regular community, there wasn't any language barriers, but there was a lot of barriers, even with people that might know the system or that might know English. So you could imagine what it's like for our community, that they're afraid, they don't know their language, and a lot of times they don't know who to reach for help. So I believe that in order to go forward, I believe, like you're saying, how do we bring those folks that are accountable or are in those positions to have a listening session, maybe not just with us, but with the community, where we could take them to the community and hear directly from them. A lot of times we think a lot of things, but not until we listen to our community, the struggles that they went to and what they would like to see happen.
Thank you so much, Jose. Love it. I see Ara's hand up. Ara.
Hi, just wanted to share a little bit of what we had talked about in our breakout room. So we talked a lot about so I work for Center for Human Services and we're behavioral health. So it's a little bit different than the services we offer is different than we're here ready for a natural emergency, but there are still definitely avenues that we can use because we're such a community hub of services and programs where we can, at the very least, information, it's always good to be able to utilize information. One of the things that came up was for me specifically throughout this entire kind of learning cohort event, it's well, here we are all at Northtown ACH. We're talking about connecting community resources. It's but we're all here. So, and I know that Northtown ACH has that database of here's the list of if you're looking for this, here's the list of folks who are part of the collaborative network. If you're looking for this, and it's an Excel file. So I think utilizing that would be fantastic, perhaps making some sort of flyer with a QR code that goes directly into that file, or a website. It's so you can go through on your phone if there's an emergency. So that was one idea that came up to me. And I also wanted to say a little bit about there's been a lot of conversation on the chat about hiring folks with lived experience. How do we do this? How do we build trust? How do we do XYZ? And so again, this is from a behavioral health lens. There are always going to be some positions that are kind of locked in terms of education. You're hiring for a master's level therapist. We're looking for someone with this bachelor background, this specific kind of degree. At this point in time, we can't really get away from it. But I encourage folks to go back to your organizations and look at your job posting, your template. Is your language updated? When you're posting jobs, are you encouraging BIPOC or those who are bilingual to apply? And are you providing a bonus perhaps of compensation for those skills and those services? Are you encouraging the community? Are you looking within the participants of your community? Perhaps letting them, you know them best. There's this position I think that you would be a really good fit for, right? And you participate in the program, you're interested in it. So I would encourage folks to sometimes you get locked into those educational requirements, but not for all of your positions. If there are positions in your agency where lived experience could either be equivalent or substituted for educational requirements, I encourage y'all to do that. Check out what's going on right now and see if and just start from there. And yeah, I think that that's a really good way to bring your community back into your organization, and they already know what the programs are. They'll be your biggest advocates as well. Give folks an opportunity. And I can say for a fact, I'm one of those people where CHS gave me an opportunity, and I'm not only grateful, but also I believe in the mission. I believe in our mission. So I want to work harder for our mission and also be able to provide opportunities that I was given. So it's all kind of a pay it forward kind of vibe, but take a look at your job posting and make sure, am I reaching out to the communities I actually want to reach out to? And just start from there and then build up.
Thank you, Ara. Absolutely. Well said. Michael.
Yep. I wanted to share, and Ara, those are all great ideas. And there is actually software available that you can run your job postings through to see that if it is inclusive or not. I'm going to talk from my perspective. We had a group and we're getting to talk about resources. And I really think from my perspective, and I'm not speaking for my group, this is a discussion about the haves and have-nots. And this is really a discussion about equity and access to services, and people's lives are on the line now. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for the Hispanic, Latino communities to come together to create that community that they need to help one another through all those different aspects of diversity. Not everybody speaks Spanish. I found out that there are people that were speaking some kind of native Indian dialect from Mexico, and that exists all around South America, Latin America. And so those issues within the Hispanic community and how to communicate with people. And then the other thing is about undocumented people. That's specific, very specific to the Hispanic Latino community. And I think that that's a part of the community building process. What I think is missing is the two hands that need to come together to clap. We have the Hispanic community here trying to get the resources they need to their community when there's a disaster. And then you have the people who have the resources. People like our institutions, your fire departments, your police departments, first responders, all of those kinds of things. My belief is it is a merging of the two. You cannot just have the Hispanic community coming to ask for resources. You need to have people come out and ask other people, how can we help you? And when you are dealing with inequities, the burden really is on those who have to go and reach out because of all of the issues that need to be resolved. And all of these issues need to be resolved by developing relationships with these communities. I'll give you a really quick example, and I don't want to take any more time. When I was working for a hospital and the COVID vaccine came out, they said, we need to get these vaccines out to the African-American community because they are a marginalized community, healthcare inequity. I said, okay, so how do you plan to do that? Well, we're going to have them come to our clinic and then we're going to tell them what they need to do. I said, you're going to tell them what they need to do? I said, I think that it would be more effective if you went out to go reach to them so that you can build that trust that may be missing. And I asked them, where are you going to go to meet the community? And they said, I don't know, we can just set up a clinic and have them come. I said, no, you need to work with the community and go over to the churches because that is one of the areas of the African-American community that people come around. So there is something that happens within the Latino Hispanic community where people come around as well. And I would encourage our people who are our first responders to go there and work with them. And I think that this is a great way to also help with opening people's minds that first responders are there to help.
Thank you so much, Michael.
That's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Yes, the power of bridging. We have to meet in between. We cannot just do all the work from one side. Aiden, please.
Thank you so much. So I work in aging and disability resources. I just wanted some clarification on what kind of are the asks, right? Like if we need a framework for how to structure resources and how to prepare communities, I have a lot of options and it's like, oh, could we tailor something from like the FEMA disaster management? Like I just put a link in there as one of the examples and their Community Lifelines program for their Community Lifelines toolkit. Like, are we looking to build something like that just for our community and more tailored resources? Or am I misinterpreting the ask? That was my question.
Jose?
I think a couple of things. I think that would be for the general community that, you know, the services that we're able to provide a lot of times, it's for people that might have the proper documents. But when you're dealing with part of the community or a huge part of the community that's undocumented, a lot of times they don't qualify for the services. So, you know, how do we work also with communities, organizations, or with, you know, private foundations that are able to provide, you know, resources that a lot of times our community don't qualify for. So both.
I also wanted to say and add on to Jose that sometimes our families feel sort of stuck not necessarily because they're undocumented, but maybe they're going through the process and they're just wondering, is this going to affect me as a public charge? And so for that same reason, they don't want to move forward because they don't want to ask for something that's going to, in the future, impede them of getting, you know, their resident card or becoming, you know, a legal citizen in the United States. And so sometimes that is also a hardship. And so they don't move forward with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we could continue this conversation. Amanda.
First of all, thank you to all the panelists. It was amazing to hear your stories. And I want to raise up what Jose said about the wallet size pamphlet. I think a wallet size pamphlet, Know Your Rights. I had that in my backpack for probably 10 years. So I know those things work. They're simple. So I think identifying central locations that handle resources and distribution and distribute resources in the community, and then creating that wallet size pamphlet would be really helpful. Also lowering barriers to service, like complicated application processes. And then maybe having one application that can qualify an individual for all of the services that they qualify for. So it's not having to go and apply for various different things for various different applications, but somehow having them all connected to one application.
Thank you, Amanda. One more question to our panelists before we wrap up. I know I'm taking a couple more minutes. So if you had one wish, right? What would be that tangible strategy that you would like to utilize to educate your communities? I hope that my question makes sense. I'm happy to repeat. One tangible thing that you would like to implement to educate your communities about emergency preparedness. There you go, I said it better.
So I hear it as two questions. One would be for me is that to help anybody with no barriers. So when they come to our doors, you know, that we're not denying any services to them because of their legal status or, you know, what they look like or whatever it might be, but no barriers where we could find an organization that will support people and meet them where they are. As far as resources to get the message out, I think we have a lot of wonderful resources to be able to reach. Always the personal outreach is probably one of the best. There's always our local radios. You know, there's other ways but for me, I think that's one of the ways that we could do more outreach, especially in a situation where there's an emergency. The radios and then television and then the local churches. The churches are really good about announcing you know, programs or resources.
Thank you, Jose. Sylvia.
If I had, I guess I can respond in two ways. I guess one wish would be sort of to have like a tier. I love the idea of a tier response sort of pyramid where, you know, depending on, you know, I'm imagining like this 800 number where families can call. It's a flood response time. They call this number and then we move them according to the tiers of what they're needing, with no barriers, of course, and not and just simplifying it in a way where families can be reached in a sense and have their needs met without having to overcome so many steps in their process, right? Because that's going to lead them to an easier process and easier support and fast support as well. And I think just equity for all is the idea of what we want for our families. We want our families to access the way any monolingual English speaking family could, without, you know, breaking down those barriers for them.
Thank you,
So
Sylvia.
that would be my wish.
Awesome. Christina.
Exactly. I think, you know, as a panel, we all agreed the same. You know, there's a lot of barriers, fears for our community and everything. We can also use, like Jose says, you know, try to find how we can educate our people, you know, and then one of the things, use our resources. I also we have an access through the local newspaper that we can use for teaching and use those means, you know, the radio, the newspaper. There's a lot of pamphlets that can be made out and hand those out. And again, my thing is like a resource book. You know, if someone can't call and can't log on to a computer, can't fill out an application, then we're not doing them a service, you know. And somewhere where someone can help them out do this. We also need to have a place. Okay, if you need help, this is a place you can go and someone will help you fill out that application.
And I just want to thank you, Christina. I want to just thank the whole panel for just being here for support, because I feel like we need to start somewhere and this is a good place to start.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your flexibility. I know that I'm taking 5 minutes away from you, but I hope that you have found this information, this presentation, this conversation useful and inspiring. And I hope that this is the first conversation of many, because we have to come together as community. We have to become more compassionate because we have to support one another. So with that being said, thank you very much. And yeah, I hope that you have a wonderful afternoon. And check out the library, the resource library. And if you have any questions, any comments, or anything that you want to have a follow-up up with me, you know where to find me, rocio@northsoundach.org. Thank you so much. Hasta luego. Adiós.